If you've been asked to run a meeting or workshop and you've got no time to prepare for it, this video gives you the 4 essential tips that you must do to make sure it's a success. And if you watch until the end, you're going to hear my absolutely essential tip for any meeting or workshop that guarantees the meeting has a great impact and, more importantly, that you are remembered for doing a brilliant job. So if you've been asked to lead a meeting and you've got no time to prepare for it, I'm going to give you a really short view of what you need to do now to make a success of that meeting or workshop. First thing to do is find out how many people and who are coming to your meeting. It really will help you to know the seniority. Do they know each other? How many? Are we dealing with 30 or 10 or 130? Probably not 130, I imagine, if you've just been asked to do it immediately. Then what you're going to do is grab some post-it notes immediately, grab some pens, grab some blue tack, and make sure there's a flip chart in the room or take one with you. Those are your go-to facilitation tools for any session. So you've got all of those organised. Get into the room. Once everyone's arrived and you've done introductions, here's how you run a vanilla meeting, if you like. So you don't yet know what this meeting's really about. Here's what you're going to do. Firstly, give everybody some post-its. So everyone's got a pack of post-its, and ask them to write down 2 or 3 objectives that they would like to get out of that meeting. They'll do that for a couple of minutes, then stick them up on the wall, on the flip chart, on a whiteboard, and group them together. So get them to share as you take their post-it, ask them what it's all about, stick it up, ask if other people have something similar, and you can start to group together all of those objectives. And that gives you an agenda. So in no more than probably 10, maybe 15 minutes, you will now have an agenda for your session with 3, 4, 7 different things that you need to get out of that session. Your job now is then to work out which is the first set of things to take. Pick the easiest if you can, or ask the people in the room which one to go with first if you don't know. And then you need to think about what type of session is it. So there are loads of different, it kind of depends on who you speak to, but there's 5 to 7 to 9 different types of discussion or workshop session. We're going to cover here some examples. So 5 examples I can give you. So the first one is a problem solving session. So if you're trying to solve a particular challenge, there is an issue that you need to deal with, the go-to technique, if you've got no other time to think about it, is options recommendations. So what's that? That is getting the group to only come up firstly with options and tell them that you want more than one. So 5 to 10, 10's probably high, but 5 different options for solving this challenge is how you want to start it. Why you do that is if you just ask the group, what do we do about this? Then typically you'll get a lot of groupthink start. The most bold person in the room may well answer, and then other people tend to sort of fall into line and build on or indeed detract from that point. If you get the group to come up with some options first without too much time spent analysing them, then you move into the recommendation, which is some time spent looking at each of those options and working out which is the best one, and indeed refining them as you go. So that's your first one for problem solving or dealing with challenges. Number 2 is a review session. So this is where you want to know how far we've progressed with something as an organisation or maybe a project, and we want to know how we're doing on this, what do we need to do next. So your go-to method here is to use the radar technique that we talk more about in our training, but this is a session where you can just simply say to people, out of 10, how well have we done? How good are we at this particular thing? If you get each individual to write down their answer on their own, that then gives you a conversation, because there will be difference of opinion very likely, and you can then explore, starting out with who's got the lowest opinion, who's got the highest, why is that, and what you're doing in that conversation then is starting to unpick what's going on, what are the elements that are making up this sort of view of a review of progress. So capture the points on the flip chart as you go, and that's your review session. Number 3 in our 5 different types of session that you might be dealing with is prioritizing. So this is where you've got to work out what's the best course of action from a whole range of options. Go-to solution for this is the 2x2 matrix. So our video covers this And really simply grab the flip chart, and you need to draw a 2x2 matrix. Your horizontal axis is going to be about business impact or impact of this action, and your vertical axis is going to be about how easy it is to deliver this action, to make this project happen. And then very simply get your ideas located on that matrix, get the group to talk about why they think something's going to have a big impact or a smaller impact, why something difficult or easy. Capture the notes as you go, and then you'll emerge with 2 or 3 of those points which are in the top right hand corner of your matrix, and you'll know which ones are your priorities. You can see our video, as I've mentioned, that you can find out more about how to do that. Number 4 of sessions you might be dealing with, understanding issues. So trying to work out what is causing the challenge. So the go-to session here is your 5 whys. Very simply, this session is simply about keep asking why until you get to the root cause. So for an example for this I've heard about is the Titanic. Why did the Titanic sink? The first answer is because it hit an iceberg. Why did it hit an iceberg? Well, it was travelling too fast. Why was it travelling too fast? Well, it was trying to break the blue ribbon and win the blue ribbon for the fastest Atlantic crossing, etc. There are other reasons. You can go down other routes. This is sometimes called an issues tree as well, this approach, where you start to unpack what's actually going on to cause the issue that you're talking about. So the 5 whys if you're dealing with trying to work out a problem or an issue. The 5th session type is a planning session type. So this is where you're trying to work out a plan of action for what this group or organisation needs to do next. The go-to session for this is the brown paper planning approach. So that really simply get your post-its back out again and start with the end. It's normally easiest to begin with where do we need to be and by when, if you know that. So start at the end and then get the group to tell you what needs to happen to get to that ending point. If they're a more senior audience, they'll tend to talk in big terms. So we need to look at where we are now. We need to think about our options. We need to get to the future. More junior groups tend to take you into more detailed actions. Both are entirely valid. Just depends on the group you're dealing with. And you want to put out your post-its across that flip chart or brown paper towards your milestone end date. We've got a video on this, tells you much more about how to do that than I've done in those 20 seconds just then. But that brown paper planning is your go-to option if you are running a planning session. Once you have got towards the end of your session, make sure throughout it you are capturing the actions. So the what do we agree needs to be done. Get those on a separate flip chart. Put that up at the room at the beginning of the session and have the what needs to happen, and then leave enough time. I'd leave at least 10 to 15 minutes at the end if it's a short session, much longer if you've been in an all-day session, and go through each action and ask who is going to do this. It needs to be someone in the room. It's really important that they don't allocate actions to people not in the room. It might be that someone in the room needs to commission someone else to do that piece of work, but you need the name of someone in that room, and then when will they do it? Why is that important? Because the second you start asking who's doing this action, I guarantee you, once you put a name on it, they will then ask for some more conversation in the group about what that action really means, what's within it. So get your flip chart pen out and get ready to take some notes for them so that you've got a note of a bit more detail of what's behind each of the actions. So that's your what's happening, who's doing it, by when does it need to happen. Really important. And then the final thing for all of your session is the follow-up. Write a good report of the session. It's really good discipline for you as a facilitator because, one, if you know you have to do this, you will make sure that you've got just enough understanding of each of the conversations and points made so that you can write it up. Your flip charts need to be done well so that they support and guide you in this. And the most important reason for why it's useful is it gives a great note of the session, and that's why you will be remembered. When people come to look at that note, maybe people who weren't in the session, they really need to understand what happened and why it happened and what the decisions were. So your report is going to do all of that. We have a video on how to write a great meeting report because it's something that's done really badly, and it's a shame because it's the thing people remember you for, and it's the value of the session. The actions and why we made those decisions, really key. Not difficult, just needs a bit of thinking. So there you go. If you've been asked to run a meeting, you've got no time to prepare, that is your go-to set of things. You need to make sure you know who's in the room, grab your toolkit, work out what the agenda is by asking the group to give you some post-its about that, and then run your session following the types that I've explained in this video. Make sure you capture the actions and who's doing them and by when. Good luck with your session. Please subscribe and like this video, it really helps us out.